Hey everybody. So before anything else, I'd like you guys to watch this video.
Drop the Krispy Kreme.
It's okay. I got that.
Back at it again at
I wanted to record Bruce Lee.
This is a certified...
Alright, now there's quite a large chance that you probably don't understand what just played, let alone find it funny. But the fact is, for thousands if not millions of internet users, the clip I just played is a well-executed and legitimately entertaining piece of comedy. How exactly can that be? How can a rapid-fire stream of unrelated and disorienting clips, sounds, and images possibly be interpreted as comedy? Well, today I'm joined by MrDachshund99 to ask the question, what is 21st century humor? As a preface, I'd like to point out that I'm not a historian nor am I a psychologist, and all of this is just based on my own observations and that of others. But I hope I can at least put a few things to rest. Before we get started, I want to make something clear. Although I'll be saying 21st century humor, or abbreviating it to 21CH, I'm not actually referring to the overall humor of the past 2 decades. I'm referring to the specific subgenre of internet humor of the same name that sprung up in the last few years. So let's begin. What exactly is 21st century humor? Well, it's difficult to describe. In essence, the term refers to a style of video or image in which the humor is derived from a complex and seemingly unrelated combination of elements, used in an extremely ironic and referential fashion. As insane as it may seem to some, there are circles in which this is considered humorous. To understand how something like this came about, let's look back at its history. While 21st century humor itself is quite new, it has roots in several earlier internet phenomena. The first of these is the so-called random humor of the early 2000s to 2010s, the first major instance of internet humor being based primarily around being unexpected. The next step on the journey was the YTPs of the mid to late 2000s, a phenomenon often compared to 21st century humor thanks to its patchwork collage-style approach to comedy. After this came the MLG parodies of the post-2013 era, a milestone if only for the fact that it was based entirely on over-exaggerated satire and parody of a genre. After this, we see ironic subcultures like OKBR and Arab Funny springing up circa 2017. Finally, as a culmination of a decade and a half of development, we see the rise of 21st century humor. If we try to trace it back to pre-internet days, we can even see roots in the ideas of surrealist comedy. With that out of the way, the first thing to note is that 21st century humor seems to be based on a bizarre fusion of 2 drastically different styles of comedy: simplistic, rapid-fire shock humor, and extremely ironic, referential, postmodern humor. These 2 seemingly different elements must be blended together in a very specific way so as to not overpower each other, and the use of each must be regulated. Let's start with the first. On one side of 21CH, we see what is quite possibly the simplest form of humor. Let me explain. It's often stated that things like puns and sarcasm are the lowest form of humor, as they require virtually no prior knowledge and essentially restate things that have already been said in an altered way. In some ways, this can be seen in 21CH, simply showing an idea, then repackaging it in a simplistic way. However, this side of the equation features another element of humor even more fundamental: surprise. Surprise is arguably the simplest form of humor. It plays an element in surrealist comedy, setting up one thing and doing something else that subverts expectations. Surprise is understandable to literally everyone. Babies can understand surprise with literally no prior knowledge. This too is evident in 21CH. In this classic and often remixed clip, former Vine star Marlon Webb holds out a piece of paper he claims to be a weed card.
drop the drug.
It's okay. I got that weed card.
However, when that weed card is replaced by a sorting algorithm, or Freddy Fazbear, or any number of things, our expectations are subverted and humor is derived. 21CH is rife with this, a large portion of its appeal being based on this incredibly simple interchange. However, as stated before, this is only half of it. The other half of 21CH, which sets it apart from any other piece of surrealist media, is an extremely satirical, ironic, postmodern approach to comedy. While the subversion of expectations is simplistic and easily understood concept, postmodernism is quite the opposite. Characterized by the rejection of traditionally held ideas, the denial of any single unifying idea or truth in anything, and an intense degree of irony to the point of self-reference and critique, it's a fairly recent development, coming about in the mid to late 20th century. 21CH embodies this by lacking any single unifying theme or idea. It rejects any past ideas of what constitutes humor, blazing its own path. It also relies very heavily on irony and satire, exaggerating, misusing, and intermixing various other forms of media in a satirical way. Postmodernism states that truth and other such notions are relative, a denial of the idea that reality must follow a predetermined set of guidelines. 21CH represents this, using pieces of media in ways that they were never really intended, entertaining and funny only because the viewer sees them as such. 21CH is even more linked to irony, being one of its core tenets. Virtually every piece of media in a 21CH video or image is taken from another source, usually itself comedic in nature, and repurposed in a way that either ridicules, overemphasizes, or completely nullifies any meaning that the media may have had. Pieces of media are stripped down into a form where all of their strengths and weaknesses are revealed, then repurposed into something completely different. 1,000 forms of humor are merged into one chaotic mix, compared against each other and exaggerated for ironic effect.
So for my part of the video, I wanted to take a look at two specific Instagram meme pages. Instagram, of course, being one of the many platforms where ironic humor has thrived over the past 5 years. For this case study, I took two pages that I'm a big fan of. One, CrapChimp, with at the time of writing nearly 10,000 followers, and Shiba Pill, with at the time of writing 11.5k. Where both of these pages would be classed as ironic meme pages, they stand out to me for a few reasons which I'll attempt to get into as best I can. Also, I got CrapChimp's permission to do this whole segment, but I couldn't get a hold of Shiba Pill. I left a comment about it on one of his posts, it just got liked by one of his followers and then left. This total over-important treatment of a meme page is the exact kind of thing that Shiba Pill takes the piss out of on his page, which I've gathered having been an avid follower of the page for over a year for some reason. However, on the contrary, I don't care. There's two main ways that these pages put across their different styles of irony, but they go hand in hand, so there's not exactly discernible sections of my attempted explanation. Anyway, the most important parts are quite obviously what they post, and the captions of said posts, plus how they respond to comments. Reoccurring post captions are probably off the bat the most important part of the running gags these two pages have. There are a handful often used by both accounts, though most notably the term classic is used for CrapChimp, and the terms OC and collab are used for Shiba Pill. The jokes behind these captions are pretty simple, and in fact in the case of classic it isn't really even a joke. This will more often than not be added by CrapChimp when posting a meme that he's posted before, for example breaking news fresh fruit, though occasionally on something completely random, making it even funnier. Aside from the classics, we have an array of one-word captions, personal favourites of mine being bloke, fella, etc., and often the use of the middle finger and heartbreak emoji for a negative response and a thumbs up for a positive one, mostly ironically of course. With OC, Shiba Pill uses the term very ironically, normally when posting someone else's post, lazily altered in a way in which it's obvious he's contributed little to nothing, most notably with original posts from Doge and Cheems accounts, and recently moving into well-known older meme templates with nothing but a watermark on. Though occasionally it'll be someone else's post and a simple reaction image as a second slide, and sometimes it's literally just a screenshot of something that has been edited in an entirely random way or just not at all. This leaves his followers to basically completely make up the joke that they think the image is meant to put forth. Collab is pretty much used the exact same way, a jab at often low-effort memes that have several meme pages attributed to them, and also meme pages who try to genuinely hype their memes, so it'll occasionally come under a low-effort or stolen meme, or as a massive announcement like Karen in Among Us featuring Ray William Johnson, and has also single-handedly in my circle of friends turned the handshake emoji into a running joke. Oh, and he also just posts pitbulls with no context. It's still funny, but I really wish it wasn't. Now, as you might be able to imagine, the way commenters react to these captions and posts is usually just by repeating the content of them, among an array of jokes pieced together from the page's post and caption history, and in rare occasions even something somewhat original. You can normally get a like or response from CrapGent for saying something slightly to do with the post in question, and though with Shiba Pill it can be more potluck. Here are some examples of my own comments that have gone down well on the Shiba Pill page. Well, dear God, my brain is melting and I feel like I deserve to be bullied for trying to be even remotely serious about this shit. You can barely begin to explain why pages like Shiba Pill and CrapGent are funny, the former especially, even when they're among your favourite places to derive comedy as they are for me and my friends. For people who haven't had the opportunity to rot their minds with this stuff over the course of many years on the internet, it must be truly baffling.
So, where does this leave us? We have two facets of humor that seemingly clash with one another: an extremely simple, easy to understand form of humor, and a form of humor taken from layers upon layers of comedy, altered over time and subverted. This is seen very easily in the media. In a typical 21CH video, the simple fact that none of its constituent parts were used properly and that most of them were interrupted by something different constitutes a basic form of shock humor, using surprise and the unexpected to elicit a response. At the same time, however, many elements need further explanation. Yes, the videos are nonsensical, but without the knowledge of what Freddy Fazbear is or who King Bach is, the viewer wouldn't know it was nonsensical. 21CH is built entirely upon reference and inside jokes along with pop culture, essentially comedy that is laid on the backs of other comedy. 21CH uses ironic reference and design, something very complex and layered, to create nonsensical, surrealist shock humor, something obscenely basic and straightforward. Now, this has almost certainly happened due to the internet, and it's unlikely something like this could have arisen without it. Especially on the internet today, millions of differing ideas are exchanged at rapid speed. Ideas come and go extremely quickly, being born and dying out much faster than in the days prior to the internet. This has created a culture consisting of very complex combinations of ideas, along with a way of thinking that is constantly and rapidly evolving, building off what came previously. And if this is the case, it would mean that 21st century humor is a form of comedy completely indigenous to the internet rather than any distinct group. Truly, a hallmark of our modern era.